My goodness. I hope, sincerely hope, all you out there in the audience caught that silver bug long ago. Silver has hit yet another historical milestone, and it's still going. Ain't showing no signs of stopping. On top of that, things in Minnesota are truly heating up. We have a major break in the Fulton County election scam of 2020. We've got news for you about a couple of things in Minnesota as well. Fraudsters getting arrested, getting indicted. Hope you guys are staying warm up there, up north, because we're pretty comfortable down here in Florida. All right, if you guys haven't yet, do me a favor, hit that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. Cisco, I'm going to need you to lay down, buddy. Mommy's not here, so please, just do what I need you to do. I want to say thank you to Trump One. Happy Friday, Zach and Pilled fam. Thank you very much for that. So, guys, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're getting into it right about now. Thank you very much. We are still on Don Lemon's jail watch. We're waiting for Don Lemon to be arrested. It is obviously going to be the focal point of the show at a certain point, but I do want to tell you guys this exciting news right here. Silver hit $100 an ounce for the first time today. It is currently sitting just below $104 an ounce. So that is amazing. Now, I mentioned to you guys, I think yesterday, that the true value of silver should be much, much higher. After 200 plus years of artificially keeping the price down, it has now officially gone past the point where the major financial institutions can successfully suppress that price anymore. This is my favorite meme of the day. Look at me. I'm the $100 now. That is really a crazy way to think about it. A dollar bill, the U.S. dollar, is now worth 1/100th of an ounce of silver. In fact, it's worth a little bit less than 1/100th of an ounce of silver because, of course, now it's at almost $104. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the show it was surpassing $104. We'll go ahead and check it out at the end. Now, I saw this. And this is in relation to that true value. Now, this is based on the M2 inflation. So this would be the real adjusted value of gold and silver right now, given where we're at with the U.S. dollar. So gold, despite all that, because of all of that suppression, and the same for silver, should be at around $12,783 per ounce. Silver should be more like $744 an ounce. Now, I'm seeing people suggest that based upon this runaway activity, we should probably expect $150, $200 an ounce silver in the next week. My goodness, if that happens, a lot of us are going to be in a much better position than we were just a couple of months ago. Now, I don't know where you guys stand with silver, but I've been collecting silver since I was a little kid. I've got a ton of junk silver, 90% silver that was given to me by my dad. I've got coins from all over the world. My dad was in the Army, and he also just traveled the world after he was out of the Army, and so he brought a bunch of global currency back and gave it to me. I've been collecting coins myself since I was a little kid, and of course I've been buying bullion quality silver for many, many years. I haven't for the last couple of years just because things have been tight, but take a look at this. All right, so if you own 50 ounces of silver personally, that means you belong to the top 20% of individual silver owners in the world. If you own 150 ounces of silver, that puts you in the top 5% of silver owners in the world. And if you own 500 ounces or more, then you are in the 1% of silver owners in the world. So there are 8 billion people on Earth. there are only 4 billion ounces of silver that are available. I'm proud to say I am in that top 1%. I have definitely got more than 500 ounces of silver from collecting all during my life and being lucky enough to have bought in back when it was much, much cheaper. I mean, can you imagine? I know we've got some of you in the chat. Some of you out there in the chat who bought just tons of silver like in the 90s when it was $4 an ounce. Like, my goodness. So P Blue, it may just end up being that silver is the only way I'm able to retire. So let us hope that silver continues to skyrocket to the moon, because if I ever want to take a day off, I'm going to have to sell my silver. And I definitely am not going to even think about selling it unless it gets up there, unless it gets really up there. Now, of course, you know, I mean, this does not mean that I am wealthy, because I'm certainly not. But I'm just fortunate enough to have been saving silver for many, many years. So I hope that there's plenty of you out there in the audience that are at least in the 5% club, and that many more of you are also with me in that top 1%, because I never even thought about it that way. Retired jeweler bought gold at 300. Oh, Florida for Trump. Good for you, bro. Good for you. Yeah, I had a buddy back in Michigan who was a jeweler, and, you know, I mean, when I was there last time, I mean, gold was sub $2,000 an ounce. I mean, I first started paying attention to gold when it was around $600 an ounce, and never really thought about it until that point. And I know my buddy Matt, he's got, I didn't even know, dude. I mean, he's got all kinds of gold. He's got all kinds of bullion. He's got all kinds of chains. He's got all kinds of rings. And then he's also got a bunch of junk silver that he's basically just hoarded over the years, that he was waiting for something like this to happen. So anyways, good on you guys if you have also been collecting precious metals all these years. I am so stoked about this. Also saw this coming in from the Department of War CTO. That is the Office of the Undersecretary of War for the Department of Research and Engineering. And way to just lean into it, guys. They say, yes, the Department of War has directed energy weapons. Yes, we are scaling them. Light speed lethality, directed energy dominant. So I don't think anybody is, you know, shocked that we're admitting we have directed energy weapons. I think that very intentionally recently the administration has allowed this to get out, because they haven't specifically talked about certain things, but the idea of laser weapons has been around for a very long time. Jewish space lasers, anyone? And then, of course, any other host of different types of directed energy weapons. We've been paying attention to that stuff for many years, but it certainly is interesting now, given the commentary that we see coming from the administration, the peace through strength war doctrine that President Trump has been pushing for the many years he's been in office now. And, of course, the story coming on of Venezuela. Let me say thank you to Sober and Stilettos, who says, happy Friday to my dinner prep boyfriend. Hi, Lisa. Mwah. Thanks, Zach and Lisa, for always keeping me in the news loop. I'm heading to Mexico next week. Say a prayer DJT doesn't strike while I'm there. I will definitely pray for you, and hopefully you're going to be fine. Just don't go anywhere the cartel is likely to be setting up and trafficking drugs. So I'll also make sure you don't go any place where you might get kidnapped or something like that. I mean, they see a blonde American woman, and they are likely to snatch you up off the street. So hopefully your husband's going to be there with you. All right. Also, thank you very much to Will to Push Forward. At Zach, John Thune has made fighting the corrupt judges like fighting tied up, especially with there are those certain people who want to criminalize being criticized. You keep the chats engaging. Yes, John Thune is absolutely not doing anything to help the agenda. He's also not doing anything to help us hold these judges or public officials accountable. I'm very, very disappointed. I never really cared for John Thune in the first place. I'll be really honest with you. And there's a number of Republican House members who just voted on some stuff that like directly falls in opposition to Trump's plan, to the America First doctrine, to everything that Doge uncovered. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, but Will to Push Forward, thank you very much for that. Now, take a look at this. Gavin Newsom, Sparkle California Barbie meets Patrick Bateman. He did end up having an interview on stage at the World Economic Forum, and the moderator at Davos asked him about not only what Scott Bessent said about him, but what the White House and official administration accounts have said about him as well. I mean, there's obviously been a number of barbs that have been thrown back and forth, but take a look at this. I thought this was pretty funny.
Treasury Secretary described you as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken. The White House Communications Director.
That was the U.S. Secretary of Treasury.
I have a couple more, and then you can respond.
Don't get ahead of yourself, Gavin. They talked a whole bunch of shit, and I want to read them all off to you.
The White House Communications Director called you Gavin Newscomb, and an official White House account, a federal government account, described you with I'd say, very online sexual slur that people here probably don't want to hear.
Now, there's only two things I can imagine what that is. A very online sexual slur. Did they call him a faggot, or did they call him a cuck? I think it's probably cuck. I think that Gavin Newsom was called a cuck by an official White House account. Because remember, AB said that he screwed Gavin Newsom's wife while Gavin watched, and Gavin never said anything about it. He never tried to dismantle the rumor or anything.
8:30 in the morning. And you're, in some sense, responding in kind. And waving the knee pads around.
Fire with fire.
Do you think, should you? I mean, is that kind of discourse from you, from them, good for America?
No, it's deeply unbecoming. Come on, of course it is. It's not what we should be doing. But you've got to point out the absurdity. So
then why do you do it, Gavin? He says, so you got to point out the absurdity. Pointing out the absurdity is totally different from engaging in the exact same type of behavior that you're decrying, that you're saying they should not be engaging in. You're perpetuating it. I have no problem with it. I want to go on record. I love it. But I just think it's hypocritical coming from Gavin Newsom. Now, what's even better is that Scott Bessent did another interview there, and he was also asked about Gavin Newsom at Newscomb. And Scott Bessent did not hold back. He came up with a new insult for Gavin.
I think Gavin Newsom may be cracking up with some of these things he's saying. I think he may be in over his hairdo. And being on the national stage is very different than being governor of California with no signature achievements. But to say strange things like President Trump is a Tyrannosaurus Rex. What the hell does that mean? I could say Gavin Newsom is a brontosaurus with a brain the size of a walnut. And if he brought the knee pads, maybe that was for his meeting with Alex Soros. I don't know. I think Gavin Newsom.
It was for his meeting with Alex Soros. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I got Scott Bessent is my favorite gay of the Trump 2.0 administration. This dude is so quick. He's intelligent. He's witty. He knows. Oh, my God. Why is the cool set? No. Jeez, oh, Pete. I just tried to turn the air conditioning on, and it was set to 32 degrees in here. What the hell? No, it's not AI, Joan. It's real. It's real. Think about this. This is totally real. This is 100% real. This is being shared by the Rapid Response 47 account. This is a very, very real statement made by Scott Bessent. And, even without knowing that it was shared by the Rapid Response 47 account, I have seen Scott Bessent just take Gavin Newsom and with other people to the mat without even thinking about it. Like, he just doesn't even care. And it's good. I'm glad he doesn't care. Continue. Scott, carry on. Oh my God, I gotta wipe my eyes. I'm crying. Oh, Lord. Oh, happy Friday, everyone. And also, thank you so much to #1 Indiana Dad. Look at that. Oh my gosh. You didn't have to tell us exactly there, Bill. But #1 Indiana Dad says, I'm in the 1%ers too. All Silver Eagles. 17,200 ounces, which is 1,100 pounds. I sold 3,400 ounces at $65.05 to pay for my wife's care. Oh, buddy, I'm sorry, man. Else, I would have 21,500 ounces. Holy jeez, man. That is awesome. I hope your wife's doing okay right now. Okay. All right. Okay. Continuing. Now, this was also another clip that I actually had pulled up yesterday. This is the German chancellor speaking at the World Economic Forum. And, you know, I mentioned the other day that there was a different mood in the room at the WEF. I mean, normally these people show up, they pat each other on the back. They're kneeling for each other. They're glad handing a lot of self-congratulatory words, talking about how they know what's best for the world and the world just needs to get behind what the elites tell them that they should be doing. But the truth of the matter is President Trump showed up and he backhanded them and told them that they were all little bitches whose plans have quite literally been foiled by him, his administration, and the will of the people. Sovereignty over globalism. Globalism is dead. Now, one of the greatest, well, not greatest, but the greatest examples of failure in globalist governance is the European Union, and that is what the German chancellor talks about here.
We are aware of those problems. Both Germany and Europe have wasted potential for growth in recent years by dragging feet on reforms and unnecessarily and excessively curtailing entrepreneurial freedoms and personal responsibility. We are going to change that now. Security and predictability take precedence over excessive regulation and misplaced perfection. We must reduce bureaucracy substantially in Europe. The single market was once created to form the most competitive economic area in the world, but instead we have become the world champion of over-regulation. That has to end.
The European Union is a failure. Germany is in shambles. Right now, over half their people think that their immigration plans are disastrous, that the freedom of speech that for many years they were afforded has completely been stripped away, that an overreaching government has gotten involved in and likely killed members of the opposition in AfD. I think that AfD is poised to take control in Germany largely as a result of the people of Germany being forced to go through this horrific experience for the last several years, watching the systematic failure of their government and the long arm of the EU stepping in and telling them what they have to do. So either these people, either Germany, either the EU, every other EU nation, either they evolve beyond their failures or they will be dissolved. And frankly, I think that dissolving the European Union is probably the best thing that you could do. It just simply doesn't work. Now, somebody I saw in the chat mentioned Trump the T-Rex, and I had set up all of those T-Rex videos that I made, but I don't know where they are. Hold on. Hold on. I can actually pull them up for you so you guys can see. Let me see. Video source. Video source. There we go. Trump T-Rex. And then add files. Downloads. T-Rexes. All right. So I made like 5 different videos of President Trump turning into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Some of them have sound, some of them don't. None of them quite did what I wanted them to do. Really, I wanted him to like actually turn into the T-Rex, not for like the T-Rex to burst out of him. All of them inspired by Gavin Newsom, though. All right, there we go. Okay, so continuing past the European Union, also at the at Davos on stage, President Trump and the members of the Board of Peace, they officially signed the documentation allowing the Board of Peace to begin operations. And Marco Rubio, of course, because he doesn't have enough to do, he was there, and he just mentioned a little bit about what I've spoken about in the past, these global governance organizations that truly do nothing except usurp sovereignty. And that age is done. Now the Board of Peace is here to actually do the work that none of these other groups have ever done.
I also want to acknowledge the extraordinary leaders that are here today. This is not just a board of peace, this is a board of action. Just like President Trump is a president of action. A lot of times people like to give speeches. I've been to many of these forums, and they're not useless, and they're not, they have. But oftentimes in international affairs, we often find ourselves at events where people are reading these scripted statements, these strongly worded letters that they put out, but no action, nothing happens. This is a group of leaders that are about action. And the President of the United States is a president of action, of getting things done. And today is the beginning of that, of a new era and a new stage that we think is so important as a model to the rest of the world of what is possible. And clearly the focus is right now on Gaza and making sure that the plan that's about to be presented to you here today, this vision for the future of Gaza, this vision for the future of the region, is not just possible and promising. It is our destiny if we put the time and the effort that it requires, as I know this board will do. But I also think it will serve as an example of what's possible in other parts of the world. Without losing focus on what's before us now, this is what's possible for other places and other conflicts that seem impossible to solve right now.
All right, so I saw somebody say the video's too loud. Here's the thing. Every single video that I'm going to play was mastered by somebody who wasn't me. And I have a limiter in place so that it will only go so loud. But the problem is, some of them are too quiet. So I can't control the volume of these videos, and, frankly, to me, it didn't sound too loud. But I'm almost deaf because I wear these headphones and I listen to loud stuff all the time. But regardless of that, he mentioned Gaza, and Jared Kushner gave an address while he was there, and he actually showed off the slide plan for the master plan for the city of Gaza. You've got 4 distinct phases where this is the plan to have this stuff up. You've got coastal tourism planned right here. You've got an industrial complex, which will be for data centers and for advanced manufacturing. You've got distinct zones set up for parks, agriculture, and sports facilities. The yellow areas are the residential areas. Purple is going to be the highways and local transportation. You've also got roads, obviously, that intercut all of it. They're planning for a state-of-the-art port, a train and backport logistics station, a crossing between Gaza and the other areas that abut it, and then you're also going to have an airport. Now, here is what they're planning. More than 100,000 permanent housing units, which will be in New Rafah. More than 200 education centers. I would assume that is, their public school system. More than 180 plus cultural, religious, and vocational centers. And then also 75 or more medical facilities. And this is the vision of what those new buildings are going to look at. Like, very futuristic. Here's the transportation hub. That's going to be the new port that they're going to be building. And they expect more than $10 billion in GDP for New Gaza by 2035. The annual household income to exceed $13,000 US. More than 500,000 new jobs in construction, agriculture, manufacturing, services, and the digital economy. More than $1.5 billion investments in local schools, also vocational training. $25 billion investments in utilities and public services, and about $3 billion invested in commercial zones, business districts, and micro grants and loans coming to people who want to build up the infrastructure there. Now, real briefly before we continue, I have a quick message they want me to give you from over here on Rumble. And you guys, patriots listening in the audience in a world flooded with big pharma lies, mega ministry, gatekeeping, and Hollywood deception, Faith and Freedom TV is fighting back. We are amplifying real voices with uncensored news, powerful teachings, worship music, and truth-filled content 24/7, free from distortions. You can subscribe to that Rumble channel at faithandfreedom.live. That's faith fnfreedom.live, like Nancy, and you can catch Amanda Grace dropping prophetic fire, Danye Clement, that would be Kim Clement's daughter, sharing biblical revelations, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny exposing health truths, the Resistance Chicks standing bold for freedom, and Rick from Blessed to Teach bringing daily inspiration. You can also subscribe right here on Rumble, hit notifications, and join the movement against elite silence. Go now to faithandfreedom.live, subscribe, and let's reclaim truth together. You can also use that QR code on screen or just search for them right here on Rumble. Thank you very much to the good folks over there at Rumble. All right. Now, in regards to the growth here in the United States of America, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is predicting 5% growth this quarter, which would make the United States the world's largest economy and the fastest growing economy. Now, you might remember that Al Gore predicted back in 2008 that by this time, the polar ice caps would be totally melted. In fact, he predicted them to be melted and a good portion of the United States to be underwater within 5 years. There was that famous film that he made, An Inconvenient Truth, which turned out to be an inconvenient memory and a reminder of the fact that he was ultimately wrong. Because now here we are in 2025, the polar ice caps have not melted. In fact, Arctic sea ice and Antarctic ice is at all-time records. We are currently experiencing a polar vortex in the northern half of the United States. And Howard Lutnick said that he had a wonderful time at Davos, which included getting heckled by one Mr. Al Gore. Al Gore, I didn't even know the guy was still around. It cost something like $75,000 to make your way to Davos, and nobody wants to know what Al Gore is saying nowadays. And if Al Gore shows up at your dinner party and starts talking about something related to climate change, I think everybody is going to roll their eyes. So what happened is Howard Lutnick was speaking, and Al Gore literally stood up in the crowd, started booing and heckling Howard Lutnick. He was actually at an invite-only dinner, and the report came out that Lutnick criticized Europe during his remarks, rightfully so. I mean, Europe also criticized Europe, and the European Central Bank president, Christine Lagarde, suddenly left the dinner because she was so offended. Now, Gore said, I sat and listened to his remarks. I didn't interrupt him in any way. It's no secret that I think the administration's energy policy is insane. Well, that's not actually what happened. However, other people have come forward to say exactly what really did happen. So during Secretary Lutnick's 3-minute speech, no one left hastily. Only one person booed, and it was Al Gore. So allegedly, Lutnick claimed in an op-ed that he wrote for the Financial Times that the Trump administration was not going to Davos to uphold the status quo, but they were going there to confront them head on. For far too long, the fate of the global economy has been decided by an international establishment who took America's economic power and gave it to the rest of the world. Some of our past leaders believed that the lies that offshoring was necessary, borders were not, and our national interests needed to submit to global lower cost of labor for the common good. That approach failed the United States, it crushed American workers, and it ripped apart most of the rest of the world as well. It destroyed industries, it weakened supply chains, and it left working people in most Western countries behind. Now, Al Gore suggested that U.S. government policy should promote regenerative agriculture. Well, it should, and actually that's what Health and Human Services, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr., USDA, that they're actually working on regenerative agriculture. So Al Gore is a little bit behind on that. He also added that the U.S. needs policies that are in recognition of the fact that governments around the world typically do subsidize farming, but don't subsidize them in ways that incentivize them to go in the wrong direction. They incentivize them to go in the right direction. Apparently, Howard Lutnick was speaking, and Al Gore started booing. Then he stood up, and he actually told Howard Lutnick to, like, F off or something like that. He's probably just jealous that everything he predicted back in the day never came true. Now, of course, his protege, Alexandria Occasional Cortex, made a similar claim just a couple of years ago. And I think that her prediction of the world ending is no closer to happening in any respect either. So let's hear from Howard Lutnick talking about just how good the American economy is doing and how good we will be doing in the very near future.
The guy that Gore was getting all worked up about. What happened, Mr. Secretary?
So I wrote an op-ed in the FT, and it basically said that globalists, offshoring all our manufacturing to cheap labor around the world had failed, and that the World Economic Forum was a failure. But I wrote that op-ed, and so at the end of this lefty, basically a very left set of talks where someone said we need a new form of capitalism, which I think is another way to say communism. And then they let me speak at the end. And I gave a 3-minute talk. And I just talked about my op-ed. And at the end of my talk, one person out of the 200 yelled out, "Boo!" So I look over and I'm like, who booed? And it's Al Gore. And I look at him, I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Boo." And I'm like, it was the greatest honor of my trip to Davos. I mean, what's better than Al Gore, incapable of discourse, incapable of anything? And you all remember that Al Gore told us that by today, in 2025, the whole ice cap would be gone and Greenland would be green.
Now it's red, white, and blue. So
Bump. All right. Now, speaking of global warming, President Trump mocked the environmental insurrectionists because right now we've got record cold in 40 states around this planet. 200 million people right now, perhaps some of you in the chat, are potentially in the path of a historic winter storm. And it is expected to span more than 2,000 miles across the entire United States. They're talking about major travel hubs, places like Dallas, Atlanta, Charlotte. They're all supposed to get hammered with snow. But, of course, Al Gore, back on December 13th, 2008, predicted that the polar ice caps would be completely gone in 5 years. President Trump succinctly mocked Al Gore earlier today by saying record cold wave expected to hit 40 states. Rarely seen anything like it before. Could the environmental insurrectionists please explain whatever happened to global warming? Well, it was always a fraud. It was always a fraud. It's always a fraud. All right. Now, we got to do a vibe check on Jack Smith. I mean, that performance yesterday was just awful. And there was a woman sitting behind him. I'm not exactly certain who she was, but it was pretty clear that she was sick to the stomach, just absolutely filled with pain and regret, being forced to watch Jack Smith have to go through the plowing that he did by the Republicans in the on the committee. Take a look. Watch her face. This woman right here.
Yes, sir, we did.
Yes, you did. And the subpoena covered the time period between November 2020 and January 2021. Is that right?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you say that again?
We're not going to point right after he got sworn in as speaker, all around the time of a major vote. That sounds like a flagrant violation of the speech or debate clause to me, and I think most people agree with me. And Speaker McCarthy,
she's like, "Oh, this is bad. This is bad, Jack. What are you doing? This is not how you explained it to me when you were going through it." Oh God, she's like, she is positively petrified watching Jack Smith just get utterly eviscerated this entire time. Painful to watch. Also very, very exciting to watch as well. Doodah Man says, "You deserve more, but we are both on SS in Palm Beach County. Thank you for all you do. Much love and peace." Well, thank you very much for that, sir. I really do appreciate you. 123 SKG, thank you for the cookie. And then also a boneless chicken. Thank you for the shades. I appreciate you. All right, so let's also do a vibe check down there in Fulton County, Georgia. Now, as we are all well aware, the election in Georgia is still unresolved. Going back to 2025 years now, and we still don't have answers from the people who administer those elections. Well, yesterday, the Georgia State Election Board held yet another hearing, and Joe Rossi, who was the co-author of the now famous State Election Board complaint from 2023 to 2025, was afforded the opportunity to finally present a rebuttal to a previously heard report from the Secretary of State's office back in May of 2024. Now, during that May hearing, neither Rossi nor the co-author Kevin Moncla were afforded the opportunity to rebut the report that was put up by the Secretary of State, which was total garbage. Now, among other severe issues, one of that report's claims was that 3,125 ballots were actually duplicate ballots that were added to the final machine count on December 4th, 2020. And according to the testimony that Rossi offered, that number is now even higher, 3,900. Allegedly, they found by the Department of Justice in their investigation, which Rossi disclosed has already begun. Let me repeat that. The Department of Justice, Trump's Department of Justice, is currently doing its own investigation into the 2020 election. And since they have taken up that investigation, they have already determined that more fraudulent ballots than we even knew were used in the official final tally count to deliver Joe Biden the election win in 2020. Let me also remind you that Joe Biden had a vote tally that was, I believe, somewhere around 11,300 ballots higher than what Donald Trump had. So the margin of victory was very, very slim. Silver and stilettos, yes, I am an election denier. That is correct. Now, Rossi showed an example of how the duplicated ballots were scanned in a way that makes it highly unlikely there was any sort of human error. This wasn't a mistake. This is something that was intentionally done, and I think most people already feel that way. But getting it on the record is highly, highly important. Now, not only was it done intentionally, but it was also done intentionally in such a way so that it would be difficult to unwind later on. Rossi described the way these ballots were shuffled in during the hearing. Here is the clip where he describes what he actually found, and it is from my good friend CanCon.
Now, here's the part that I think is really concerning that you guys never got a chance to see. So this is a chart completed by our experts, okay? And I think there were some comments around, well, maybe somebody just made an administrative error. And we had a stack of ballots over here that somebody thought weren't scanned. So we just grabbed that stack of ballots and we ran them through the scanner again. Human error. This chart is very complicated, but let me explain this chart in very simple terms using some color paper. This is what happened, and this is what our experts can prove and have proven. And this is what y'all missed because we were not given a chance to rebut. All right. So this stack of yellow ballots. All right, we got pink ballots, yellow ballots, and I hope you all pay attention to this. Yes, James left, and blue ballots. And let's say we run these ballots through one scanner. Okay, scanner one. Batch one, scanner one. Batch two, scanner two. Batch three, scanner three. So the thought is, well, maybe somebody was in a hurry and they just said, hey, it's late in the day, we forgot to scan this batch of ballots, go scan them. That's not what happened. Here's what happened. And I'm going to ask you one question. Is this administrative error? Somebody, I don't know who, and I don't even know why, took ballots from this batch, not necessarily from the top, maybe from the middle. And oh, by the way, flipped them in reverse order. Okay. And then they went to the next batch. Again, not taken from the top, I'm not taken from the middle. And made a new batch. And guess what they did with that new batch? They took that batch and ran it through a different scanner, let's say scanner 4, and oh, by the way, on a different day. So my question is that an administrative error? I believe that was intentional human intervention. And I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers tell me that intentional human intervention is the predicate for election fraud. And again, you guys missed that little demonstration because we were not permitted to rebut the present out.
So there's only one way to explain how that fourth batch came about, and he does such a good job. Now, in addition to those 3,900 duplicated ballots that came in to the December machine count, Rossi also discovered 6,961 ballots in Fulton County that were double and triple counted during the hand recount on November 16th, 2020. Now, this discovery was confirmed by none other than Governor Brian Kemp's own office in November of 2021. And a letter at that time was issued to the Georgia Secretary of State from that governor's office. Now, Fulton County election officials and the Secretary of State's office have on numerous occasions repeatedly denied any discrepancy in those counts. And they continually pointed to the fact that there were 3 recounts that all aligned. But yesterday, during that state election board hearing, Joe Rossi disclosed that the election group's Michael Pendergrast sent an email to then Deputy Director Nadine Williams and then Elections Director Richard Barron with an attachment that detailed multiple errors in the hand count audit results. That's a direct quote. Multiple errors in the hand count audit results. Consistent, but not as extensive as those discovered by Rossi and documented in his complaint. Now, that email was sent November 19th, 2020. That was just 3 days after the hand count Oh, Chi-Chi, or Muffin, what are you doing, honey? My God, she was standing behind me and I just kicked her in the face. Muffy. My God. I think they have to go outside. Do you have to go outside, Muffin? Oh, they need their medicine. Gosh darn it. I forgot to give them their medicine. So by the next morning, okay. Let me finish this section right here. Richard Barron, the then elections director that reached out to another elections group member, Ryan Macias, via email on December 3rd, 2020 at 12:06 p.m. over concerns about the second and official machine count coming in at approximately 511,000 votes, 17,000 votes shy of the approximately 528,000 that were initially reported. Well, guess what? By the next morning, 16,198 votes were added to the report to bring it up to the necessary number of votes. Now, hold on. We're going to watch this short section.
To be honest, driving up here, I got some recent information yesterday, and I really thought, this information is devastating for Fulton County. And this is beyond, the chairman maybe did this differently and would have done it this way. And to be honest, we need you, Chairman Furbier, to help us going forward to get to the truth.
Not according to Mr. Schroeder.
No, maybe we'll calm him down after this. But, all right, Sean, let's hand this out first. I have a copy of this document, and Sean, you've got it up there. It might be a little hard to read. So I want to read it together because I've only had this for like 12 hours. But I've been aware of it for probably 2 months.
Thank you.
Okay. And if you're...
Okay, so Fulton County election officials knew that the hand count audit results were falsely inflated. From that November 19th, 2020 email with Pendergrast to the Deputy Elections Director, Nadine Williams, also sent to Elections Director Richard Barron, carries an attachment which details multiple errors in that hand count and the audit, most of which are the same errors discovered by Mr. Joe Rossi, the man speaking, documented by the governor, referred to the state election board for investigation and correction. They confirmed that 6,691 fictitious votes were in fact added to the hand count audit results, but were never corrected. The email correspondence establishes that Fulton County election officials knew of the errors at the time, even the same day that the Secretary of State released the results. Those officials knew that the hand count audit results did not match nor substantiate the results from the November 3rd, 2020 election results. Now, I'd like to also remind you that President Trump just mentioned the other day that the election of 2020 was stolen. He said it, I believe, on stage at Davos. He also said that some people were going to be going to jail. Now, these people here in these official positions were alerted to the fact that there were fraudulent votes that were injected into the Georgia 2020 election results, and they did nothing about it. In fact, they repeatedly lied to the American people, to the people of Georgia, saying over and over and over again that everything was above board, that Georgia's elections were the gold standard for the United States of America, when in truth, they knew that it was anything but. Anything but. So, give me just one moment, guys. I've got to give the dogs their medicine, and I'll be right back. Let me put this on. No, wait. Hold on.
Good morning. I'm here to give you an update on the FBI's investigation of Secretary Clinton. What I want to do is tell you what we're recommending. But first, let me tell you what we found. 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it make?
8 of those chains were top secret, 36 of those chains secret, and 8 contained confidential information.
What difference at this point does it make?
Everything I did was permitted. There was no law, no regulation.
Secretary Clinton should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email.
None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system, not even Gmail.
Well, first of all, nothing was marked classified.
To the contrary.
Nothing was marked classified.
There is evidence of
Nothing was marked classified.
Now let me tell you what we found.
Oh my gosh.
110 emails.
It was not the best choice.
52 email chains.
It was a mistake.
Have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it make?
8 of those chains were top secret.
Wasn't the best choice.
36 of those chains
I said it was a mistake.
and 8 contained confidential information.
What difference at this point does it
With
make?
respect to our recommendation, this is going to be an unusual statement in at least a couple of ways. Although there is evidence, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. I know there will be intense public debate. I know there will be intense public debate. I know there will be intense public debate. What difference at this point does it make? 110 emails.
It wasn't the best choice.
52 email chains.
I made a mistake.
Have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it make?
8 of those chains were top
It was not a good choice.
36 of those chains
I said it was a mistake.
and 8 contained confidential information.
What difference at this point does it make?
We're back. Okay. All right. So they go through. They know exactly which scanners, exactly which batches were tallied, what were put together. But at the end of the day, this is a revelation I think all of us have been waiting to hear. It is, however, shocking because it's exactly what we said. Many of us had our accounts censored, had our accounts stifled, had our accounts taken away from us because we were talking about these very issues some 5 years ago. And, of course, President Trump and 18 co-defendants were literally brought up on racketeering charges because they were trying to get to the bottom of what happened in the election in 2020. Now, take a look. Well, we're not going to. This basically just goes over the email that I had right there. So even though all these inconsistencies were discovered by election officials, reported perhaps to the election officials in Fulton County, there were a number of other counties that we've spoken about on numerous occasions in the past that also seem to have these same large discrepancies between the initial machine count on November 3rd and then the hand count that was done 2 weeks later. In Floyd County, you had approximately 2,600 extra ballots. Douglas County, over 275 ballots. Fayette County, approximately 2,800 ballots. And then Walton County also had 284 ballots. Now, all 4 of those counties yielded net increases for President Trump. And those same voting systems were then again used in the January 5th, 2021 runoff election that ultimately gave the Biden administration control of the Senate, electing Senators Raphael Warnock and Senator John Ossoff. Now, if those discrepancies had been remedied in the November 3rd recount, a runoff probably never would have been necessary. And if Fulton County had acknowledged they had major discrepancies in the election counting, would those machines have then been investigated? And perhaps they would have been deemed unacceptable, unable to be used in future elections. So right now, I think that we are now on Fulton County arrest watch because President Trump has said it on numerous occasions. I think that if you'll remember, Tulsi Gabbard specifically was working on a report for the administration dealing with the inherent security vulnerabilities in our electronic voting machines and the systems we use around the United States. I think that these two things are now about to dovetail, hit head on, and we're going to see finally admissions about the reality of our election system here in the United States and what actually happened in the 2020 election. Like you guys are already aware, we know what's happened in the 2020 election, but it's time that the rest of the country learn what happened in 2020. And who knows, maybe some major changes will happen as a result. All right, now, we also have a couple of updates for you. First of all, there were 2 nurses recently who made those terrible comments about Caroline Leavitt, wishing dramatic physical injuries to happen to her body when she has her baby coming up here in the next couple of months. We watched a video from one nurse, and we're going to check in on her, but there was another one that I saw in passing yesterday. Never had a chance to watch it, but this is her right here. Her name is Lexi Lawler, and she is a labor and delivery nurse at Baptist Health Boca Raton Regional Hospital. This is her video about what she wishes would happen to Caroline Leavitt.
As a labor and delivery nurse, it gives me great joy to wish Caroline Leavitt a 4th degree tear. I hope that you fucking rip from bow to stern and never shit normally again, you cunt. As a labor and delivery nurse.
Well, seems like a lovely woman. Anyways, Baptist Health has responded, and they want everybody to know that this bitch doesn't work there anymore. The comments made in a social media video by a nurse at one of our facilities do not reflect our values or the standards we expect of healthcare professionals. Following a prompt review, this individual is no longer employed by our healthcare system. While we respect the right to personal opinions, there was no place in healthcare for language or behavior that calls into question a caregiver's ability to provide compassionate, unbiased care. We are committed to an environment that promotes trust, professionalism, and respect for all. She done effed around, and she found out.
See, as you can see, the more you around, the more you're going to find out.
Now, that broad down in Ohio, or rather up in Ohio as well, the same wish she had that that Caroline Leavitt would suffer a 4th degree tear during childbirth has also officially been fired. Now, we don't need to watch her video again. We watched it yesterday, but she is now no longer employed. In the same way that this other nurse, essentially admitting that she does not have the ability to give unbiased, compassionate care. She will no longer be working for that healthcare system. So bravo. Very happy to see these quick investigations taking place. Also, very happy to announce that ICE has arrived in Central Florida. You can see here ICE surging resources into Central Florida as of this morning. More than 350 illegal aliens were being held at the Orlando Orange County Jail. A protester has also been detained by local police because they were engaging in activity that wasn't legal. Let's take a look. Glad to see it. Welcome, ICE. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad to have ICE in Florida. I mean, this kind of ICE. All right, now, here is an exchange between some ICE agents and some ICE watchers in Portland, Maine. Take a look at this. I love that they're getting a little quippier.
What you guys are doing here? Yeah. Look at them. Look at that. The ICC here, guys. Be careful. Be careful. Be over here.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist. So
We're videotaping you? Are you crazy?
you guys are doing here?
Because we have a nice little database, and because you're now considered a domestic terrorist. I absolutely love it. Put that bitch on the no-fly list. Make sure that she has a very difficult life going forward after engaging in this type of behavior, impeding the efforts of a federal agent seeking to make America safe by getting these dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens off of the street. If you got a problem with that, I encourage you to go out there and tell it to the ICE agents yourself. Make sure you bring your car, too. All right, now, a lot of people have given Kash Patel a lot of guff because they say that he hasn't cleaned up the FBI quick enough. Well, what would you do if I told you that he's actually been in the process of cleaning up the FBI the entire time? We've just got confirmation down here also in Florida that Kash Patel has ousted the heads of field offices in a couple of different areas, as well as senior agents that were tied to two major federal criminal probes into Donald Trump. Now, the special agent in charge of the Atlanta field office has been dismissed, along with the acting assistant director who was overseeing the New York field office. Now, a former special agent in charge from New Orleans, who had since transitioned to a different role, was also removed. In Miami, up to 6 agents were let go due to their roles in the FBI search of President Trump's personal residence at Mar-a-Lago. Keep it up, Kash, and I hope that we get rid of all of them as soon as possible. Now, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, has also put out a notice making sure that everyone is aware that a major cocaine kingpin has just been arrested. This is somebody who has had a lot of coverage because his name is Ryan Wedding. He was actually an Olympic snowboarder, and for some reason, at some point, he became a cocaine kingpin. Wedding was arrested outside of the United States and was just flown here so that he could face justice. Kash Patel has been working behind the scenes to make this happen as quickly as possible, and he also gave a press conference as we received Ryan Wedding here in the United States.
And none of this would be possible without the tremendous leadership of Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice and our partners and prosecutors at the United States Attorney's Office here in LA and our Los Angeles field office. Here you'll see many of our brave partners, including the Commissioner of the RCMP, the Chief of Police of the LAPD, our LA field office, ADIC, along with our partners from DEA and CBP and more. This is what a united front looks like. And just to tell you how bad of a guy Ryan Wedding is, he went from an Olympic snowboarder to the largest narco trafficker in modern times. He is a modern-day El Chapo. He is a modern-day Pablo Escobar. And he thought he could evade justice. But these brave men and women put together a prosecution package, put together an investigative package, put together an operation strategy. And here we are today, bringing him to justice for trafficking hundreds of kilos of cocaine and also for the murder of innocent civilians. This individual and his organization and the Sinaloa cartel poured narcotics into the streets of North America and killed too many of our youth and corrupted too many of our citizens. And that ends today. I also want to have a tremendous shout out to the government of Mexico. President Sheinbaum, Secretary Harfuch, and the military and law enforcement officers of Mexico worked hand in glove with our teams on the ground there.
Now, Mexico has also handed over an additional 37 major cartel bosses. I think that obviously is a sign that Claudia Sheinbaum and the government of Mexico is doing everything they can to make sure that President Trump and special forces don't begin kinetic strikes on cartel locations. But I think it's not going to be enough because there's a lot more than a couple of dozen people who are trafficking cocaine up into Mexico and then into the United States. We've got a big job ahead of us. Anne-Marie70 says, glad to see ICE in Orlando. I am glad to see ICE in Orlando as well. Obviously, there are a couple of big places where these people have gathered, and that's definitely one of them. So get in there, boys. Do whatever you can to round them up. We need all of them out of this country as soon as possible. Now, Continuing from Kash Patel's speech earlier today, we've also had an update on Chief Health Equity Officer and the VP of Health Equity. These are DEI hires at Hennepin Healthcare. This is in Hennepin County, Minnesota. Both of them have recently left the hospital. The Chief Financial Officer has also left the hospital. It would appear that there is an ongoing investigation into the likely use, probably by these specific employees as well as others, in the use of company credit cards for personal expenses. Now, the hospital would not say if these people leaving the company are directly related to that investigation, but what we can say is that there has recently been an email sent out by the Hennepin County Health to people working there that they are facing dire financial straits, probably because the federal government is not sending a bunch of free money for the healthcare coverage of illegal aliens, and they've hired far too many people. Why would you need a health equity officer? That makes absolutely no sense. Yeah, will to push forward. I don't trust Claudia Sheinbaum either. I don't think anybody should trust Claudia Sheinbaum. I think that her sending those 37 cartel bosses up here is an act of self-preservation. Claudia Sheinbaum is not good for Mexico. So, Hennepin Healthcare takes its responsibility to steward public resources seriously and has conducted a thorough audit of the organization's purchasing card use. On December 5th of last year, Hennepin Healthcare suspended all use of P-cards pending results of the audit. We are taking appropriate actions due to the active nature of the investigation. We are unable to give any further information at this time. Now, here is that email which was sent out to Hennepin Healthcare employees. This was in the middle of the month, talking about their dire financial position. For months, cash on hand has hovered around zero. And in nearly early January, the system's cash positions went negative, requiring the use of a county line of credit to meet payroll. We are now fully in crisis mode and must act decisively. This is what happens when you give free health care to illegal aliens and millions of welfare recipients who are not contributing anything back into society. It's Tony Man says, hey, Zach and Lisa, did you see the video of Ivan Raikland posting trashing Dan Bongino? I did not, no, and I probably wouldn't want to play that. Personal note, I go for all my pre-surgery blood work and tests next week. Surgery scheduled for February 18th. Keep Tony in your prayers, guys. Hope you're going to be all right, man. We will definitely be praying for you, and let us know how everything goes. All right, so before we continue, let me give you a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. I want to tell you guys about a law that has just passed. We've talked about it a couple of times. You probably remember President Trump legalized hemp back in 2018, but our corrupt House and Senate has put forth legislation that passed a ban on almost all CBD and hemp products that should happen by November. Now, hemp, if you know, is not the same thing as marijuana. Hemp is a historic American commodity. George Washington himself grew it. Some of the colonies required a percentage of everyone's crops to be hemp, and colonists could even pay taxes with hemp. In 1930, before it was banned for the first time, hemp was used in 25,000 products, and it generated $1 billion a year. For perspective, that equaled 25% of the federal budget. So hemp holds tremendous potential for today's economy in America. And here's what's been happening. A few powerful groups of big pharma and big marijuana lobbyists have been pushing for this ban. This legislation makes CBD and hemp products scientifically and financially impossible to make. That affects 325,000 jobs, and it wipes out thousands of American innovations. Innovations that range from energy alternatives to durable building materials and even biodegradable plastic alternatives which reduce microplastics and the dependence on Chinese products. So this ban will affect a lot of us, and it'll definitely affect America in ways that people have probably not even considered yet. You can click the Emerald Med link below to learn about this bill and how you can help fight against this ban. The company Emerald Med, who helps support channels like mine with ads, has been fighting this ban, and they fought vaccine mandates during COVID, and they reached 120 million views in ads fighting those mandates. Now they're fighting this ban, and they need your help, so please click that link below and learn more about how you can help. It's free to help America keep this vital commodity. You can use that QR code as well, or just the link that you see in the chat. Thank you, guys. All right, now let's talk about the church protesters. And I saw somebody say I should take Don Lemon off the screen. This is the Don Lemon arrest watch avatar. I am keeping this on screen until Don Lemon is arrested, and then when he is arrested, I will officially remove it. Until that time, I want this to stay on there as a reminder because Don Lemon should be in jail right now. So a federal judge earlier today ordered the release of 2 Minnesota church protesters. That is Judge Laura Provenzino. She is, of course, a Biden appointee. And those protesters are Nakima Armstrong and Chantel Allen. Now, they are ordered to be arrested because they are not flight risks. They do have conditions on their release. So, Condition 7D requires defendants to surrender their passport, a visa, advanced parole document, refugee travel permit, or reentry document, or any other foreign travel document. Condition 7E requires the defendants may not obtain a passport, a visa, an advanced parole document, refugee travel permit, reentry document, or any other type of foreign travel document. So the FBI yesterday arrested BLM activists Armstrong and Miss Allen because they stormed that church on Sunday. Armstrong was charged with conspiracy against rights. That's a federal crime which carries up to 10 years in prison. As I mentioned yesterday, there are civil penalties of up to $250,000 per individual who was harmed by Miss Armstrong's conspiracy to deprive rights. So that quite literally means every single person who was attending church on that morning. There was at least 100 people or more in that church. And of course, with this statement here from DHS Chief Kristi Noem, it shows us that they are serious about making sure these people pay. Homeland Security investigations and FBI agents arrested Nakima Levy Armstrong, who played a role in orchestrating the church riots in St. Paul, Minnesota. She is being charged, federal crime, 18 U.S.C. 241. Religious freedom is the bedrock of the United States of America. There is no First Amendment right to obstruct someone from practicing their religion. And just in case you missed it yesterday, there was Miss Armstrong doing the perp walk of shame, being arrested by an officer from the DHS, and Chantel Louisa Allen doing the perp walk right here, also arrested by Homeland Security investigations. William Kelly was the third person arrested yesterday, and surprise, surprise, he too has been ordered released. I would imagine under the same circumstances. William Kelly is being charged in a slightly different manner. He is also being charged with conspiracy to deprive rights and violating the FACE Act, which is 18 U.S.C. 248. He was the one wearing the F Trump beanie and the one screaming at little kids and young women and mothers and grandmothers drinking lattes because they were sitting in church. He was shaming people for being fake Christians because they were wearing clothes appropriate for church. They weren't dressed like homeless people like Mr. Kelly right here. This one was Judge Shannon Elkins. She ordered the release of William Kelly. Top DOJ officials have labeled him a domestic terrorist, but the judge also said there was no basis for pretrial detention. And I believe that Mr. Kelly is going to be facing slightly more aggressive charges than what the conspiracy to deprive rights will be, because he has these additional charges under the FACE Act. If you remember, he with a lot of bravado, dared Pam Bondi to come and arrest him, which is hilarious because she got on a plane and she went right to Minnesota. He said, yesterday I went into a church with Nakima Armstrong and I protested these white supremacists. The pastor of the church is an effing ICE leader in this city. They want to come after me. F them. F those effing Nazis. Come and get me, Pam Bondi, you effing traitorous bitch. Well, that didn't turn out too well for him. Now, I don't know what his pre-trial release conditions are. I would imagine he probably also was forced to hand over any type of passport or travel documents that he may have had. The one thing that I'm worried about is these people being tried in Hennepin County, Minnesota, because obviously there's a lot of people there who are clearly deranged democratic socialists, and they may nullify a conviction. So I hope that the federal government does a change of venue and perhaps brings it to a more rural area, Now, you can imagine if this was a group of protesters from any background, if they went into a mosque, if they went into a synagogue, if they went into a Buddhist temple and they did something like this, they would have immediately been charged by the state government of Minnesota, and they would have received the full extent of the long arm of the law. But because this was a Christian church attended by white parishioners, these people have been treated as if they did nothing wrong, which is just totally freaking ridiculous. Now, Don Lemon is still out there walking the streets. This man deserves to be behind bars. He should have already been arrested. And he has made another video speaking up, gloating about the fact that he hasn't been arrested yet. Also, like William Kelly, basically daring the Department of Justice to come and arrest him and make him a martyr. So last night, Don Lemon went on social media, started running his mouth. He also admitted that this is not over. The Trump administration, the DOJ, is going to come and arrest him at some point. It's just a matter of finding the avenue to make sure that happened. If you'll remember, Don Lemon's warrant was not, well, his indictment was not signed by the magistrate judge, Douglas L. Micco. If that judge, for that judge to have not signed that indictment, legally, it would mean that he didn't believe that the evidence presented by the federal government met the threshold for whatever it was he was being charged with. And I can only believe he was being charged under the Enforcement Act. But even if he was being charged under both Enforcement and the FACE Act, when Don Lemon did this, we went over all of the elements to be charged under those crimes, and Don Lemon met every single one of them. The wife of Douglas Micco, though, works for Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. So I think that the fact that his indictment was not signed by the magistrate judge is more to do with the fact that it's politically motivated. So the next thing that the government would do would be to either take this to a district judge, not a magistrate judge, or bring it to a grand jury. Either one would work. It's just a matter of doing it. So here is Don Lemon mouthing off.
This is not a victory.
Hang on, I'm going to have to make this agree.
Look, I stand proud and I stand tall. This is not a victory lap for me because it's not over. They're going to try again, and they're going to try again. And guess what? Here I am. Keep trying. That's not going to stop me from being a journalist. You're not going to diminish my voice. Go ahead, make me into the new Jimmy Kimmel if you want. Because I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to believe the same things, whether you want to, whatever. None of this is about justice. This is about power, and it's about people who are incompetent. Look, I stand.
Well, he's wrong. He's absolutely wrong, because it is about justice. Again, if this would have been a Muslim church, if this would have been a synagogue, if this would have been any other faith, the FACE Act and the Enforcement Act would stand firm. People would be charged. People would face justice. Now, Deputy Attorney General Harmeet Dillon retweeted Don Lemon's video and just said, okay, in relation to, they're going to try again and we're coming for you. Okay, we will. The DOJ is not giving up. They do plan on holding Don Lemon accountable, and Don Lemon is going to continue to broadcast in the meantime, and I don't see anything else changing. So he admitted during his live stream he had prior knowledge of the attack. He knew they were going to a church. He knew that it was clandestine. He knew that they didn't have the right to be there. He was embedded with these protesters. What's really going to count is the communications between Don Lemon, Nikema Armstrong, Chantel Allen, all of these people, what that stuff looks like in the end. Either way, these people are all looking at a minimum of 10 years in federal prison. So good. Absolutely love it. Now, yesterday I told you about the federal investigation and the congressional investigation into Ilhan Omar. If you guys have ever seen any clips of Ilhan Omar walking through the halls of Congress, anytime she's asked a question by journalists, she's always got some quip, some funny little comment to give back. She tends to be fairly combative. But given the fact that she and her husband are now under criminal investigation for their net worth exploding out of nowhere and no proof of where that money came from, and she's being investigated for the same thing by Congress, the same body in which she serves, she was asked about this earlier today, and for the first time in history, Ilhan Omar had nothing to say.
Congresswoman, can you tell us what your response is to the Oversight Committee launching an investigation into your net worth, you and your husband's net worth? They're claiming that it's risen rapidly. What's your response to what they're saying? Do you think they'll find anything in their investigation into your net worth? What's your response to what you've seen from ICE in Minneapolis? You said you're going to vote to not fund DHS, the whole department, or just ICE?
Her silence speaks volumes. Ilhan Omar, I believe, knows she's cooked. She's absolutely cooked. Not only is she in danger of facing criminal prosecution for her ill-gotten gains, she also faces deportation and denaturalization for the fact that she married her brother in an immigration fraud scheme several years ago. She could also be charged for bigamy because, as far as I'm aware, she was still still married to her husband, to the father of her children. So Ilhan Omar is facing some major backlash right now, and some difficult questions. Of course, she can't answer any of them because anything she says, of course, will be used against her in a court of law. How can you explain the increase in her net worth of over $30 million without actually explaining it? Well, you could explain it. Like for me, if I suddenly had $30 million, I would be able to tell you guys exactly where it came from. I don't have any major windfall of cash just falling in my lap out of nowhere, not having any idea where it actually arrived from. My goodness, did Ilhan Omar just wake up one morning and there was a suitcase full of $30 million sitting on her front porch? Maybe it came from one of those Somali Habibi restaurants. They sent her a sweet little bribe. Maybe this is feeding our future money. Who knows? But I think that, yeah, clawback. Clawback is the word for it. I think they're going to be clawing back that money before Ilhan Omar gets sent back to Somalia. All right, Jim Kyle says, did you see the BLM leader state on CNN that she was there to pray and didn't interfere with the sermon, but only smoke after? Yeah, I actually played that the other day. That is a total lie. We all know that didn't happen. And again, in the same way that Ilhan Omar would incriminate herself if she said anything about this, that woman incriminated herself even further by lying about the circumstances. Now, just to back up what I said earlier, this is Greg Jarrett, who is the legal analyst for Fox News. He essentially states that, what I said is likely, that either they have to go to a district judge or they bring it to a grand jury. One of those two things. That's what would happen.
Rejecting the charges against Don Lemon smells fishy to me, and we may actually learn more about the magistrate's motivations, his bias, his conflict of interest, as Kevin pointed out. Legally, the magistrate would have to have decided that these prosecutors did not meet the standard of probable cause. But just personally disagreeing with the wisdom or fairness of bringing the case, that's not a valid ground for overriding the charging decision. So, Sean, I thoroughly expect the DOJ to do one of two things here. Either bypass the magistrate, by going directly to a grand jury for an indictment against Don Lemon, or go to a real district court judge, because, you know, a magistrate is really just a ministerial assistant. You know, he handles misdemeanors and warrants and empties the trash cans.
Oh, my God. My buddy just texted me and said maybe Don Lemon has not been allowed to go to jail yet because he would like it too much. I said that the other day. Don Lemon is going to be very popular. Donna. We're going to call him Donna. All right, brother. Well, good to see you, man. Glad you're out there in the chat. All right. So continuing, we also have the announcement from U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley about a recent arrest that took place in California. California is an interesting case because every single day more and more fraud is being discovered there. This is also one of the reasons I think that Gavin Newsom may have went to Davos this year. Clearly, he's going to be making a run for president if he can survive. But if he does end up receiving some major indictment through the Department of Justice, there's a distinct possibility that Gavin Newsom might want to run to a European nation which has no extradition treaty with the United States. Now, this case of fraud was in Los Angeles, California. And this man was involved with a non-governmental organization, a homeless industrial complex NGO. He stole $23 million in taxpayer money from this program that was intended to help the homeless. As we know, under Gavin Newsom, homelessness has exploded. And according to federal prosecutors, Alexander Sufer is 42 years old. He's the executive director of Abundant Blessings, has now been charged with fraud. Over the last 7 years, from 2018 to 2025, Sufer pocketed millions of dollars, and then he used that money to fund a lavish lifestyle. He used the stolen funds to purchase a $7 million home, a Range Rover. He sent his kids to private school, and he bought plenty of other luxury items. Of course, all of those things will be clawed back as well. Now, Bill Asaley said California is the poster child of rampant fraud, waste, and abuse of tax dollars. The state has facilitated the spending of billions of dollars to combat homelessness with little to show for it and almost no oversight. Thankfully, the federal government has begun auditing California's spending, and today's is just one example of how fraudsters have swindled millions of dollars from taxpayers. This money should have gone to those in need. Instead, it lines the pockets of individuals subsidizing their lavish lifestyle. I believe we have had no fewer than 4 indictments of people just like Mr. Sufer in California since the Trump administration came in. Will to Push Forward doesn't think that the DOJ is going to indict him. They are still Dem globalist loyalists. Well, they actually already indicted him, Will to Push Forward. That's the thing. The DOJ actually indicted Don Lemon. That's what happened when they took the indictment to that magistrate judge to have him sign off on it. By him signing off on it, all that would allow was for the federal government to go and arrest Don Lemon like they arrested those other people. So that's already not happening because he was already indicted. The problem being that magistrate judge clearly had political bias, and he refused to sign the indictment. So that's why I say that indictment now has to be brought to a district judge who is a real judge, or they have to bring the evidence to a grand jury, and then the grand jury would then vote on the indictment. And then once the grand jury indicts, they don't need a judge to sign it. What they tried to do was basically like the path of least resistance to essentially get these people charged and arrest them as soon as possible. So Don Lemon is already being indicted. He's just now going to have to be indicted a second time with a different person signing or a different methodology of that indictment being handed down. So the federal government has every intention of putting Don Lemon in prison, or at least trying him under the FACE Act and the Enforcement Act. All right, so Alexander Sufis, he's 42, of Westwood, California. And like I said, he was the executive director of the charity Abundant Blessings. He was arrested on that federal criminal complaint this morning, and he is charged with a felony, which is punishable by up to 20 years in federal prison. So that money that he took included the home, vacations, luxury items, the private school for his kids. His initial court appearance was scheduled in federal court in California today. He is, of course, presumed innocent until proven guilty. For too long, California has left the spigot of taxpayer dollars on and has not provided anywhere near enough oversight of how that money is being spent. Thankfully, the federal government is stepping in to enforce the law where California has failed to do it up until this point. We are demanding accountability. This is something the state's leaders for years have failed to do. Okay, so this is the third significant arrest from the Homelessness, Fraud, and Corruption Task Force. I believe the first indictment that we heard about was when I actually had Kevin on the show, and Kevin from Portland, who exposes all of this stuff in Portland. So I'm glad to see that this is still going. There's many, many more people who can still be arrested. Misfit Angie, thank you for the $20. She says, Zach, big congratulations on your 8 years of sobriety. I missed out yesterday. Thankful you found your true calling. Believe me, so am I. Thank you so much, Misfit Angie. I appreciate you. All right, so the 63-year-old Maine woman that is featured in this report was just arrested for obstructing not ICE, but local police. You see, what is weirdest about this is that this woman is actually a retired New York State Police sergeant. Her name is Mary Conmee, and Mary was so blinded by rage and Trump derangement syndrome that she came upon a police operation and she obstructed that police operation and she accused them of being ICE, but they weren't ICE. And they basically told her to back up, go away. And if she didn't, they were going to arrest her. But she was just so blinded by her TDS and hatred of ICE, she went and got herself arrested. And she's a retired cop.
This morning, while Brewer police were helping investigate a threat at nearby schools, they say officers...
T Neo Phoenix 32, congrats to you, brother. Glad to hear it.
This morning, while Brewer police were helping investigate a threat at nearby schools, they say officers encountered a woman who thought they were ICE. Brewer police say 63-year-old Mary Conmee of Orrington deliberately drove to the scene and interfered with police activity. They say Conmee repeatedly sounded an air horn, refused lawful orders to leave, and yelled expletives at officers. Police say she stated she didn't want ICE in her neighborhood, despite reportedly having marked police cruisers and uniformed officers. Officials say her act.
Okay, Johnny says, if we can't arrest a washed-up TV opinion guy, how are we going to get the real criminals in government? Let me explain to you what a magistrate judge is. Greg Jarrett said it. They handle misdemeanors. They handle tickets. They take out the trash. Magistrate judges don't even have to go to law school. They don't have to have had any sort of legal experience. All right? Like, it is like literally it is a ceremonial position, so that the real judges handle the big cases. Again, all they tried to do was take the path of least resistance to get the indictments signed and to get these people arrested as quickly as possible. To get in front of a district judge, there's a little bit more that has to be done. So just because the first go around didn't work doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. So we have not failed yet. The federal government has not failed yet. The DOJ has not failed yet. Again, there are multiple avenues for them to take, so it's not over.
Actions interfered with legitimate law enforcement operations and created a real risk to the officers.
Interestingly enough, when we made contact with the person of interest and we're investigating this further as to does it relate to the Old Town event, this person became aware of our whereabouts because of the sounding and alert of that air horn. So when you have somebody that comes by and has this intention of interfering at all costs, it's detracting us from the safety issues at hand. It's creating another pocket of distraction, and it's just a bad overall situation.
Brewer police say Conmee has been summoned for disorderly conduct and obstructing government administration.
Why are people so stupid? It's absolutely just, it's shocking to me just how dumb people are. Oh, I guess I put this up here twice. We didn't need that. All right. This, however, is one of those things, Johnny, that you have every right to be upset about. So do you guys remember the Latin Kings gang member who put out the hit on Greg Bavino? Literally offered $10,000 for the murder of Greg Bavino. All right. So this guy was charged and he was put on trial in Chicago. His name was Juan Espinoza Martinez. He was a gang leader for the Latin Kings. he's just being found not guilty by the left-wing jury in Chicago. So this is back in October when this happened, but he was charged in a federal murder for hire plot, which targeted U.S. Border Patrol senior official leading Operation Midway Blitz, Greg Bavino, and the criminal complaint was in the Northern District of Illinois. Prosecutors allege that Martinez, who is a known Latin Kings gang member, he goes by the street name Monkey, offered this $10,000 reward for the murder of a senior Border Patrol official and an additional $2,000 just for information about his whereabouts. They had everything that they needed. They had his text messages. They had other communications. They had his movements. I mean, it was a open and shut case. Should have been no problem. But when they put him on trial, after deliberating for 4 hours, the jury found him not guilty, which is something that never should have happened because this man was absolutely guilty. Take a listen.
Other breaking news that we're following this afternoon, a high-ranking member of a street gang is charged with putting a hit out on a senior law enforcement official involved with Operation Midway.
You can see right here on screen, these are his text messages. These are messages that were sent to other people. The original messages were found on his phone. So jurors deliberated less than 4 hours and returned the favorable verdict for the 37-year-old Latin Kings gang member. He had 1 count of murder for hire, could have been in prison for up to 10 years. Testimony lasted mere hours in the federal trial, and this should not be this way. This is definitely something that it presents a major problem. And this is the thing that I'm worried about with these people in Minnesota. So even if we're able to bring the indictments against them, as we've seen in Washington, D.C., openly leftist jury pools have nullified a series of verdicts recently against people who undoubtedly committed the crimes that they were accused of. The same with this guy right here. So I can only imagine that the DOJ is going to be keeping a close eye on this guy. He's probably not going to get away with much else going forward. Who knows? Maybe he'll even leave the country. All right. We also have a statement from ICE and DHS about that 5-year-old child who was abandoned by his illegal alien father this week. Now, the media has continued to tell this story that ICE used this 5-year-old to bait other illegal aliens. And that simply never happened. They also didn't just detain a 5-year-old. His father ran from the car where the child was located, and ICE had to stay with this kid and to take care of him. So Assistant ICE Director in this clip talks about exactly what happened and, just how distraught the kid was.
This week, ICRO conducted targeted enforcement operation to arrest Adrian Alexander Conejo Arias, an illegal alien who was released back into the interior of the United States by the previous administration. When officers approached Conejo Arias, he and his child were in a vehicle. Arias fled from law enforcement on foot, abandoning his child in the middle of winter in a vehicle. One of our officers stayed behind with that child while other officers apprehended his father. After conducting the arrest, my officers stayed with the child. They cared for him, took him to get something to eat from a drive-through restaurant, and spent hours ensuring he was taken care of. Again, my officers did that, not his father. My officers did everything they could to reunite him with his family. Tragically, when we approached the door of his residence, the people inside refused to take him in and open the door.
That's the most effed up part. It was already effed up that the father just abandoned this kid. And then when ICE located his extended family, they refused to accept delivery of the child because they didn't want to get arrested too. It's disgusting.
Let me say it again. They saw the young boy and they refused to open the door and take him back. This is the human side of the job that my officers do. They are family men and women. They have children of their own. They sacrifice everything for their families. I know for a fact that they were heartbroken to see the child's own family leave him behind. Fortunately, Conejo Arias eventually requested that his child stay with him. We do everything in our power not to separate families. So they took him back together to Minneapolis, here to the city, to the ICE facility for processing, and now they are being well cared for at a family residential center, pending their immigration proceedings. This is the real face of ICE, ERO, Border Patrol, and our allied partners.
In this same press conference, the assistant director also commented on the events that took place today. Apparently, despite those barriers having been set up outside the Whipple building, protesters engaged in an elevated level of obstruction, and there was an incident that took place. I'm going to have to refresh.
Moments ago, a group of agitators, a U-Haul van filled with shields. Oh, it's not coming up. All right. Shields and gear decided to come over here to the Whipple building and block traffic. They are currently trying to impede us from getting out of the building and going and do our mission. I'll tell you right now, they're going to fail, because no matter what they put up in front of us, we are here to do a job to protect this community, to protect Minnesotans, and to keep the criminal illegal aliens off the street and put them where they belong, back into detention, and remove them from this country.
Every damn one of them. Now, as a result of that increased attention and level of obstruction, Minnesota State Patrol had ordered dispersal orders for those protesters outside the Whipple Federal Building in Minneapolis because the demonstration was no longer peaceful. Our troopers are responding to a demonstration at the Whipple Federal Building in Minneapolis, working with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. Dispersal orders have been issued because the demonstration is no longer peaceful. There are reports of objects, including ice, being thrown and confirmed damage. Arrests will be made as necessary to address unlawful behavior and maintain public safety. For the safety of all, we are asking demonstrators to leave the area. Now, I don't know how many people were arrested, but I figured I would jump over here to the, okay, see if there's anything else that popped up in the last couple of hours. No, nothing additional. Okay. All right. So apparently agitators were at Minneapolis St. Paul Airport this morning. You can see here there's just a handful of them performing a sit-in. Again, this is the kind of retarded garbage that isn't going to do anything.
Oh no, that's what they're doing.
Lots of them are apparently outside. I wonder if they're not allowing people to get to the parking ramp or to their flights and that kind of thing. All right, now, Commander Bavino, in thinking about the stuff that, we don't often hear about, especially that poor kid that got abandoned, Greg Bavino really wants people in the media to start focusing on the shit that matters, like the 300,000 plus kids that were trafficked into the United States during the Biden administration. And in this clip here, he tells a particularly harrowing story about a child that was rescued by Border Patrol agents when they came upon him. He was a 3-year-old kid. He was with people who were not his family members, and he appeared to have been drugged.
Those past 4 years. I'll detail one for you, folks, that's truly heinous.
And this footage that is playing next to him, it was footage from the time of the dispersal from earlier today. So this was the protesters at the Whipple building.
Border Patrol agents there in the El Centro sector encountered a young child, was approximately 3 years of age. The child appeared to be drugged, not with his parents, with strangers. Agents managed to wake the child up after doing what is known as a sternum rub which is a technique to wake someone up that may be induced by drugs. As the child woke up, we understood the child's parents were not with him, and medical examination saw that this child had non-surgical sutures in his abdomen. Let me say that again. Non-surgical sutures in the child's abdomen. He was being trafficked across the border in that condition. That's not an isolated event with the U.S. Border Patrol or ICE. We saw that many, many times. Drug children coming across the border, and guess what? Other than a couple of news outlets, I believe News Nation and Fox reported, nobody else would. Nothing on a child with non-surgical sutures in his abdomen, and nobody knows why.
I can only imagine what they did to that kid. I know that at times the cartel has used people as literal suitcases, drug mules. They've opened up their bodies and they've surgically implanted packets of drugs inside them so that when they get to their final destination, they can be opened up and then have those drugs removed. That person may or may not live. A 3-year-old child having back alley surgery done on him and then trafficked across the border. Who knows what would have happened to that kid? Who knows what kind of bleak future would have been waiting for him if he would have successfully been trafficked along with those adults that were not his parents? Who knows what happened to him during the trafficking process? It's the worst thing I can possibly imagine, and it's the most tragic aspect of all of this. Institutionalized child trafficking was already a huge problem before Joe Biden moved into the White House. But during his tenure, it became even more blatant, became even more obvious. It became even easier for these people to traffic these kids because now they didn't have to do it in the dark. They didn't have to do it under the table. They had the funding of NGOs. They had known sex offenders, known child predators who were on the lists of people who were accepting these so-called refugees that were being trafficked across the border. Kids were ending up in sex trafficking. They were ending up in indentured servitude. They were ending up in factory meat farms, working at sub-minimum wage levels for many, many hours more than was legally allowed. The whole thing was horrible. All right, now, Health and Human Services has just announced that General Counsel Mike Stewart has also added a second former U.S. attorney to the Office of General Counsel. Scott Brady, who is the former United States attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania, is now working at Health and Human Services. He's going to be exclusively focusing on the fraud that they have been discovering at Health and Human Services. Ending fraud and abuse across HHS programs is one of my top priorities, Secretary Kennedy said. Every year, fraudsters and criminal schemes steal tens of billions of dollars from American taxpayers. That ends now. That's why President Trump and I appointed a U.S. attorney to lead this effort. I am pleased to announce that Scott Brady has joined me in the Office of General Counsel to help me, Secretary Kennedy, and President Trump to end the flood of fraud that victimizes hardworking American taxpayers and steals critical funds from those who desperately need those dollars, our children, our seniors, working families, and others, General Counsel Stewart said. This marks a decisive escalation in our mission to protect American taxpayers. We are launching the most formidable anti-fraud initiative in the history of HHS to dismantle criminal networks and ensure that those who steal from the public face the full weight of federal law. On October 9th, following confirmation by the U.S. Senate, Stewart became the first former United States attorney to serve as general counsel at HHS. He has placed a focus on fraud as a top priority for the organization and the Office of General Counsel, including through the investigation of grant and federal program fraud. A former United States attorney for the Southern District of West Virginia, Stewart prosecuted 2 former justices of the state Supreme Court, the largest Medicaid fraud prosecution in state history, prosecuting dozens of doctors and pharmacies, as well as taking enough fentanyl off the streets to kill more than 40 million people in a state with fewer than 1.8 million people. The massive scope of fraud we are witnessing represents a clear and present danger to the American people, said new Assistant General Counsel Scott Brady. Americans who work hard and play by the rules have had enough. I am excited to partner with General Counsel Stewart to build and mobilize the most powerful anti-fraud task force in HHS history. The day of reckoning for these criminals is here. A United States attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania during the first Trump administration, Brady prosecuted significant healthcare fraud schemes throughout his tenure, including the prosecution of more medical professionals for opioid diversion than any other U.S. attorney's office in the nation. He created the first in the nation joint federal and state COVID fraud task force to prosecute COVID-related fraud, which became a national model. And notably, Brady directed the response to and prosecution of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, which was, of course, an event that took place several years ago. All right. Now, getting back to California, J.D. Vance says that in the short time that the federal government has been investigating and auditing the state, it's only been, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks, if that, the government has identified about $7 billion in the state of California in terms of fraud. And that's obviously just scratching the surface, but take a listen.
How many more arrests do we think we're going to see nationwide? I mean, look, I think we have a fraud problem that is much worse in California than it is in Minnesota. I was talking actually to our small business administrator. I think she's found probably $500 million of fraud in Minneapolis and the broader Minnesota area. I think she's found $7 billion worth of fraud in California. So this is unfortunately a problem that is much bigger than Minnesota. But it's also, it highlights how absurd this effort to prevent the immigration enforcement is. If you look at blue states, blue cities, you look at Memphis, Tennessee, not a Republican mayor. You look at red states like Texas, but blue cities like Austin. You do not see this level of chaos over the enforcement of our immigration laws. What you have is a small band of very far left people who are doing everything that they can, up to and including assaulting law enforcement officers and raiding churches, to try to make ICE out to be the ultimate enemy and to kind of engage in this weird small-scale civil war against federal immigration law. It's absurd. It's added a lot of chaos here in Minneapolis, and it's one of the problems why I'm here to fix it.
So I will answer the question because JD didn't. How many more arrests are we going to see around the country? It better as well be thousands, because that's how many people are involved directly in this fraud. Indirectly, probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Now, this is part of the reason why I agree that the military should be used to round these people up and get them off the streets. I don't know that our judicial system, with jury nullification, bought and paid for judges, overly politicized judges, I don't know if they're even going to be able to look at these things with an unbiased viewpoint. We've already seen a number of cases where it's clear that they can't. So in my mind, the only way, JD said it right there, a small-scale civil war. The Insurrection Act is there for a reason. These people are engaging in insurrection against the United States government. If they are classified as enemy combatants, then the process for justice becomes very different. Very, very different. I think that that needs to happen. All right. Now, take a look at this. The U.S. House of Representatives, in a good vote, just narrowly rejected a change to President Trump's powers, the Venezuela War Powers Resolution. This would have blocked President Trump from engaging in any further military operation. It was a 215 to 215 vote. It failed to pass. Representatives Don Bacon and Thomas Massey joined the Democrats. J.D. Vance wasn't there to vote on it, to kick it out, so it's just, basically doesn't move forward. The Senate previously voted 52 to 47 to advance it, which, if it would have successfully passed in the House, then it would have limited what President Trump could do in the future. We had 5 Republican senators joining the Democrats on the Senate side, and now this is not going to go any further. They may try again in the future, but who knows? At least it's not going to move forward right now. But in these next 2 stories, this is really going to piss you off. The U.S. House of Representatives has just rejected the effort to defund a kill switch mandate for cars. We've talked about this on the show with my good friend Lauren, the car coach. If you want to check her out, my interviews with Lauren have been on this channel, and then she's got her own channel, Car Coach Reports, that you can find on Rumble and YouTube, and she's also on X. She's like my expert go-to person on all things related to the automobile industry. So this car kill switch was initiated under the Biden administration, and what it literally is a way for the government to shut your car down when they decide for whatever reason that you shouldn't be driving. Or if, maybe the police want to get a hold of you and they just want to kill your car, and then they can follow it to where it is. And there you go. There were actually 57 members of the GOP who voted with Democrats to keep this mandate on the books. Now, not only does that give the government a scary level of power over your right to travel freely, it also inevitably raises the price of new automobiles, because it is a mandated piece of electronics that has to go into the vehicle, and somebody's going to pay for it, and it's going to be you. It's going to be the person purchasing that car. So the International Business Times reported that Thomas Massey authored the amendment targeting items in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026 to defund them. These provisions fund the implementation of Section 24220 of the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which passed with the help of rhinos like Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell. Massey focused on a rule that critics have called the kill switch mandate for vehicles, which focuses ostensibly on protecting people from drunk drivers, but obviously, I think everybody here can see the slippery slope of how this could be used in the future if they wanted to. If it's there, they're likely to use it. So this was ordered, well, it was voted on in 2021, and the law was ordered to take effect in 2026, which means that all new passenger vehicles have got to include this advanced drunk and impaired driving prevention technology as standard equipment. Once impairment is registered by the car. Now, this is the other thing. It's not just that somebody else is going to flip the switch. Your car is going to determine whether or not you are good to drive. And if your car believes that you are either impaired or for some reason you shouldn't be driving, then the vehicle responds by basically shutting down and delaying you. Now, lawmakers made sure that the detection triggers immediate intervention. It actually alerts the police immediately. So, ahead of official rules, car makers can rely on cameras, how a person steers, air sensors that can sense whether or not you've been drinking in the car. Who knows? Maybe you are driving somebody who's been drinking and they're so drunk that the car senses their alcohol on their breath. And so then the system can either force your car off the road or just stop it where it's at. I don't know exactly how that will work at that time. Instead of waiting for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to act, some brands of vehicle manufacturers are already testing these sorts of measures inside vehicles that are already on the road. So this is not a good thing, in my opinion. And the House voted 268 to 164 to continue to give the government the power to shut down your cars. The 57 GOP members who rejected Massey's amendment, along with almost every Democrat, is unbelievably disturbing. And, I'm not going to go through them because there's just too freaking many of them. But it's just another example of why these people don't deserve to govern. We've also had the House block an amendment that would have cut funding for DEI initiatives, also child mutilation, and a whole host of other things that President Trump and the administration have been working to stop the government paying for. This one was even overwhelmingly more popular among Democrats and Republicans voting together to make sure that the money keeps flowing. So Ralph Norman offered an amendment that would have axed all of the earmarks in the Labor, Health, and Human Services bill. These earmarks include funds for DEI activism, sex change procedures for minors, and late-term abortions. This was a 291 yes to 136 no to reject what I believe is extremely sensical. 76 House GOP members voted with the Democrats. Keith Self said that 76 House Republicans joined every single House Democrat in support of earmarks for abortion, gender procedures on children, DEI activism, and partisan pet projects. With Republicans like these, why do you need Democrats? Wow, one earmark sharply criticized by conservatives would allocate $2 million to Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego for pediatric mental health services. This hospital, San Diego County's sole pediatric medical center, operates a center for gender-affirming care, which performs various sex change operations, including, according to the nonprofit Do No Harm. Conservative Republicans also blasted a $3 million earmark for Minnesota's Hennepin healthcare system to build a substance use disorder treatment clinic. The hospital system also operates a pediatric clinic offering puberty blockers and hormone therapies to children. And another notable earmark requested by Democratic Massachusetts Senators Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey allocate $375,000 for arts education at the Massachusetts-based Dancer Center Jacob's Pillow. The organization says diversity, equity, and inclusion principles animate our mission and inform the vitality of our daily operations. G. Fontez 119 says, how fresh is the opening on this child who was under the influence of narcotics? Leads me to believe he's a hiding spot used repeatedly to traffic drugs. And how many more are there? Yes, that was exactly what I was referring to earlier, how people would, how the cartels would insert packets of drugs into people's bodies. All right, now, Keith Ellison, one of the people who is currently under criminal investigation by the federal government for the role he played in the Minnesota fraud scandal that is still being uncovered, turns out that he was not particularly successful when he was a congressman. In fact, he only sponsored a couple of pieces of legislation. And wouldn't you know it, one of those pieces of legislation is what made it easier for these Somalians to transfer American taxpayer dollars back to Somalia. Isn't that funny? I wonder if some of that money also made its way into the pockets of Mr. Ellison as well. This is back when he served in the House of Representatives for Minnesota's 5th District. That includes the city of Minneapolis. He sponsored this one bill, the Money Remittances Improvement Act of 2014, which made it easier to transfer money overseas. Let's go ahead and check out this video right here.
Congressman, if the Hawala is closed, some say that Somali Americans will send money to their loved ones using other means. Do you think that these other channels will pose more risks than the current system?
Yes, I think that the current system actually minimizes risk, because when you wire money, you have to show ID, say who you are, and do it like that. Now, of course, people can lie about their identity, but at least there are some safeguards. But what's going to happen if people start gathering up money, put it in a suitcase, and then get on an airplane?
Wow, look at that! That's exactly what they did. I think they were probably already doing it. This is 11 years ago.
And then fly to Mogadishu. Then there's no way to know what kind of money is being sent in, who it's being sent to. There's no control at all to make sure that Al-Shabaab or any terrorist group is not getting money. So this actually is going to have, I think it's going to have negative consequences if the Hawalas are shut down.
Oh my goodness. So on this one, he specifically mentions keeping the money flowing to Somalia.
You just have met officials from the Somali money transfer companies and officials from the Franken Bank. What was the discussion about, Congressman?
Well, first of all, let me say salam alaikum, Ilyas. It's good to be here with you with the Mogadishu Times. The discussion focused on how we can keep money flowing to Somalia.
This is just like Ilhan Omar. She was instrumental in passing the legislation which made it possible for the Feeding Our Future scam to begin and accelerate at the rate that it did. I am certain the money that Ilhan Omar is sitting on right now is probably directly connected to that, because her meteoric rise in personal wealth occurred at the exact same time that $100 multi-million fraud scheme was taking place in Minnesota. Keith Ellison, I would love to see what his personal wealth is. But of course, as the Attorney General of Minnesota, he doesn't have to file the same congressional disclosures that Ilhan Omar does. I wonder if Minnesota state government does. Does Keith Ellison report his net worth? If he does, I guarantee you he's a multimillionaire. All right, let's look at celebs net worth 2026. This is probably not correct. Okay, so Keith Ellison's net worth, according to this random website, is between $100,000 and $1 million. Aha, open secrets. Keith Ellison personal finances. So the last time we have one from him is when he was in Congress. Let's take a look. All right, so his last year in Congress, let's see, he has like, these are IRAs. He's got just a small amount of money in IRAs. His salary from the Democratic National Committee was $27,000. His mortgage was between $100,000 and $250,000. Okay, so I guess at this time, maybe he wasn't in Congress. Maybe he was only working at the DNC at that time. No, he was, Honorable Keith Maurice Ellison. Yeah, this is when he was in the House of Representatives at this time. Yeah, it doesn't actually say. All right, Berkey says these mofos need to go to jail for a long time. I don't think anyone here will disagree with you on that. All right, you guys, we're going to call it there real quickly before we go. Let me tell you one more final message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, they can freeze your accounts. They can shut off your cards. They can lock you out of your own money overnight. Banks do not protect you. They control you. And that's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So introducing the Rumble Wallet, a wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can also own Tether Gold. That's real gold on the blockchain. Through Tether Gold, you can get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. This is real physical gold without bank vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. You can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when the traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, Tether Gold can be redeemed for physical gold. That is power. And when you support creators on Rumble, you can tip them directly using Rumble Wallet. It's peer-to-peer, secure, and fully outside of the banking system. Nobody else takes a cut. No permissions, no middlemen, no cancel button. The wallet is yours forever. So head on over to wallet.rumble.com and use that QR code or the link you see in the chat. All right. And I think that the last Hill donation we have is from No Thanks Joe. He says, thanks, Lisa and Zach. I wish to you happy Friday and a demand for the two of you to have a great weekend. God bless and stay safe. Also, ZBM says, loved the show. Awesome week of news on Red Pill 78. Have a great weekend, Zach, Lisa, and fans. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. I'm just going to roll through here and make sure that I didn't miss anybody. And thanks again to number one Indiana Dad for that big donation, man. Really appreciate you. Oh, you know what? Somebody had donated on Cash App the other day, and I need to say thank you to them. Okay, so that is Lorraine. She said, congrats on 8 years. Thank you so much, Lorraine. I appreciate you. All right, you guys, I'm out. I got to go pick up Lisa. She is still at the office, and I was unable to get her earlier because I was on the air. So, Lisa, if you're listening, I'm going to be there in just a few minutes, honey. I love you. And if you guys would like to join me tonight at 10:30 on Badlands for Only Lands, then you can do that. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and I'll be back here Monday at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Final Rumble rant over here at BDAS. Arizona Demtard AG suggesting residents can shoot ICE agents. Understand your ground law. Hayes claiming ICE are not real law enforcement. Well, again, if those people want to F around, they're going to find out. That is incredibly dangerous, and she, as the top law enforcement official in the state of Arizona, knows far better. I would hope that the federal government is taking a listen because she deserves a close look as a result of that. She deserves a look for a lot of different things. Chris Hayes, whatever her name is, she definitely is somebody that I think needs to pay a significant price in terms of justice. But yeah, that is crazy, crazy stuff. Let me just put it out there for anybody who's considering that. You do not have the power to shoot ICE agents simply because they're wearing masks. If a federal agent offers you a directive, your best advice is to follow that directive. Otherwise, you may end up like Renee Nicole Good and become a martyr for the communists. That's not going to be good for you. That's not going to be good for your family. It's certainly not going to be good for your kids. And as far as we're concerned, it's just one less dipshit wandering the streets. So good luck. God bless. And I will see you guys on the next one. Oh, yeah, guys, please hit that like button. I would sincerely appreciate it. Hit the red pill. Wherever you're at, please hit the button. And don't forget about the sponsors. Check the links in the description below. When you support them, you are supporting the show. You can get chlorine dioxide at onenessdrops.com/redpill78. When you use that code, you get 15% off. You can head on over to tamaratgarden.com for 100% natural homeopathic remedies. Use the code RP78 for $10 off. Head on over to c60evo.com/redpill78. You will get 10% off single items and 40% off bundles only at that website. All natural tallow products at goallgood.com/redpill78. Also, you'll get a free gift when you purchase a bundle and 5% off with the code redpill78. You can get all natural apricot products from rncstore.com/RP78. Get your supplemental B17, 10% off with that code RP78. 20% off an order of $100 on medications at farmeasybank.com. And, of course, mypillow.com, code RP78 to get up to 80% off Mike Lindell's amazing American-made products.